Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Bloody Jacob here to bring you my Season 4 general review of the CW hit TV series, The Vampire Diaries. And, so I finally finished Season 4. I'm still slowly but surely catching up. I know the Season 6 finale aired last night, and even if you're not all the way caught up on the show, if you're a fan whatsoever, you probably are aware that Nina Dobrev is leaving after this episode, after the final episode of Season 6, which aired last night. And I know Elena's going to go out, and that's just something that's kind of unavoidable if you're a fan of the show, but I am nonetheless still quite a ways back. I still have a lot of catching up to do. And I'm not going to skip ahead either, because I would just mess up the story. I won't know what's going on. I would have missed probably a lot of great things if I were to just do that. So I still have to watch 22 episodes from Season 5 and the other 22 from Season 6 that just finished. And I have Season 5 on DVD. I'll probably end up buying Season 6 on DVD, but probably find some way to watch all of that season beforehand. And so while everyone was watching the Season 6 finale and seeing what happened to Elena at the end, I was watching the Season 4 finale. But yeah, I nonetheless really enjoyed the hell out of it, man. It was a great finale. Season 4 had 23 episodes instead of the usual 22, and they used it pretty well. I was happy with an extra episode, and I think I know why they did it, because if you guys remember, episode 20 of the season, called The Originals, was sort of like the backdoor pilot for the spin-off show, The Originals, also on the CW, with Klaus, of course, as the main character on that. So I kind of feel like that's why they added in the extra episode, to sort of like fill it out with the rest of the characters too, by having that extra one there. And also because they wanted that episode to be dedicated to Klaus, and we only got like 2 scenes, like one at the beginning and like one at the end of episode 20, featuring like our usual Damon, Elena, Stefan. And the rest of the episode is completely focused on Klaus and what he was doing in New Orleans and with Elijah and Marcel and stuff like that. But we can talk about that a little bit later. My thoughts on Season 4 overall, just in general right away. Another very, very good season, man. I haven't watched a season of The Vampire Diaries I have disliked so far. Season 1 was very good, if not great. Season 2 was just as good, if not better. Season 3 was absolutely incredible. Still probably my favorite season at this point. And Season 4 was probably right on point with like the really good or the greats of the series so far that I've seen. It's pretty much on, even though it's not my favorite compared to Season 3, I still feel like it's on par with like some of the rest of the really good consistency the series has. And I know I say this in pretty much every video I do about The Vampire Diaries at this point, but this show, man, I feel like it has such a great, like I said, consistency from episode to episode. Things flow together really, really well, and you don't feel like anything's terribly disjointed. Sure, there might be a couple times where you kind of feel like, oh yeah, that kind of happened too quickly or something like that. But it has a really good pace too. It's not too fast most of the time, and things move along, And there's really no filler episodes either. Even the episodes are not quite as much major happens, you still feel like the story's moving along. You still find out things here and there that advances a certain part of the plot. So there's really no wasting time on this show, and I think that's one of the best things about it. I mean, it's definitely the best show in that regard that I've probably seen, if I'm being honest. And just phenomenal, man. I can't use enough adjectives to describe how amazing I think this is, how amazing I think this show is. And Season 4 was not a disappointment whatsoever. I'm glad to have it. I'm glad to keep watching it. I'm definitely going to dive into Season 5 tonight or tomorrow, most likely. And I might make a video on this at some point in the future. Maybe once more people start seeing my videos, I might do a video down the line of my favorite TV shows of all time and stuff. But I might do that anyway, no matter how many people are subscribed to me. But if I'm being 100% honest at this point, I'm about to make a big statement. And if you guys feel like I'm putting hate comments below, I would expect it. But please try to be respectful after this statement. I've watched, some of my favorite shows of all time, like The Walking Dead, Being Human, Dexter, Breaking Bad, so all of them like that. You know what I mean? And I would say that The Vampire Diaries is right up there with the rest of them. I would actually probably put The Vampire Diaries ahead of Breaking Bad. Did I just say that? Is the internet about to explode and just, completely destroy my face or something? I don't know. We'll find out when I upload this video. But for me, even in season 4, even though I haven't seen the end of the Vampire Diaries TV series yet, at this point I believe I enjoy it a lot more. I enjoyed Breaking Bad quite well, and that ending, that series finale to Breaking Bad, Felina, was absolutely perfection. That's any series should aim to be that satisfying with their final episode. And Breaking Bad is always very solid all the way through, very good quality with acting and stuff like that. But I just simply have more fun with The Vampire Diaries, and I think it still has really good quality in it too. Because the actors are great, they deserve more credit, I think. Like Nina Dobrev herself, she plays Elena and Catherine, and she just does a brilliant job playing both roles. They look similar, yet they're completely different types of people, or whatever you want to call them, vampires at this point. And Ian Somerhalder, as Damon, absolutely I still think he might be the standout character in the series. He's my favorite character by a little bit. I still struggle between him and Stefan, and I'll probably continue until it's over. And it'll probably continue on after that. But Paul Wesley as well, he is just, he really steals the show with, being able to show emotion and stuff like that, And just the plot is really original for vampire stories, and yes, there's romance, and I enjoy romance, I'll admit it. And but of course in a tasteful way, of course. It's like in your face, it's all it's about, then okay, that's a little bit different. But this show uses it in a tasteful way that makes sense for the plot whenever it happens, and I really enjoy it. And the action in it is really good, it's entertaining, it can be pretty intense too. And I just enjoy the hell out of this, as I said earlier. And even though I'm still not all caught up, I think it's already starting to rank among my favorite shows of all time, at least within the top 5 anyway. So just a great season and great show in general. And of course, this season's sort of started out wondering what Elena was going to do, whether she was going to feed and die, or whether she was going to, not choose to not feed and die, or whether she was actually going to choose to feed and become a vampire. And that's the biggest no-no to her character since we first met her. And of course we all know that Elena ended up feeding when she's being held by those what do you want to call them, the church people, the priest and stuff like that, who was actually part of the those massacres are supposed to happen, with the 12 people dying in each of them, that we find out more about later with the whole Silas plan and all that. And Elena fed at that point, and she became a vampire. And that was a big concentration for the early part of the season. And it was a big concentration onward as well for the rest of the season, seeing how she would behave, how she would, what kind of vampire she would become, whether she could actually live with herself being that creature, you know what I mean? And they did it really well for the most part. It was great to see. It was a really great development for Elena as a character, I think. And to see her, sort of struggle with the same things that we've seen, characters like Damon and Stefan go through. I feel like it was just great to see how she would deal with the similar things that she's seen them having to deal with for the past few seasons. And for the most part, she would retain her humanity and stuff like that. But of course, when you're a vampire on the show, your emotions are heightened. Everything's amplified, and so of course she has a lot more emotional things. And of course, Nina Dobrev can act the hell out of her character, so she does really well with all of that throughout the season. And she ends up feeding from Damon as Damon's trying to help her, and then she actually is, this sire bond is put onto her, so she basically has to do whatever Damon says, and always agree with him, always take his side and stuff like that, sort of like how Klaus had Tyler sired to him, not too long ago as well. And so you guys know how it works if you watch the show. And so another big concentration for it was wondering whether Elena's love for Damon at this point was real or whether it was all because of the sire bond. And we found out the answer to that at the end of the season, even though it's still kind of in a triangle. But yeah, I always talk about my favorite episodes in the season. Of course, I liked the opening Growing Pains is pretty good. It's definitely a good one, with Damon lashing out at Matt and being furious with Stefan and stuff like that. But the even better episode to me was episode 2, Memorial, because of course, if you guys remember last season, we lost both, Alaric and quite a couple others as well. Yes, let me check up on something real quick. Give me a second, guys. Should have had this prepared, I know. And just that whole scene at the end is what made the episode to me. Them sort of like putting those lights into the sky, and I really like Stefan mentioning Lexi and stuff like that. Lexi, and who is a character who we don't, who we haven't really seen alive besides in flashbacks up to that point, and we see her in plenty of flashbacks this season, which is always really cool. And so that episode was good, and we also got that really touching scene with Damon and Alaric. Alaric watching Damon at the end, who, Damon seemed to be against what they were doing with all the lights and stuff like that, so he went off on his own out, to Alaric's grave. And we've seen, seen a more vulnerable side to Damon's character. And, how he's taking care of the children and, things of that nature, and how he didn't get the girl, but we'll see what happens at the end of the season. And, of course, Alaric's line, I miss you too, buddy. And, it's just really touching and sad, and, feels, And, let's see. So that one is one of the favorites of the season for me, anyway. And, of course, we were introduced to, Connor, who is a vampire hunter, who turned out to be part of the 5, the original vampire hunters. Who even, we can trace back to Klaus and Elijah, Elijah's time. And we find out about Rebecca's link to one of the original ones as well, her romantic one, but he ended up betraying her, and Klaus slaughtered all the original 5. And of course they found out later that Klaus had to deal with the hunter's curse, which it means if you kill a hunter, then they basically torment you in your mind psychologically. They appear to you and force you to commit suicide, basically, or they try to push you to that point, by bringing up all these things, having a complete knowledge of everything that's wrong with you or everything that's troubling you, and they use that to, try to push you to that point. And so Klaus had to deal with that for decades himself. And so when Elena killed Connor, she had to deal with that as well. And so that was a really good psychological type of, I don't know if I want to say arc or just the way the story went with it. I like that. And, just because I don't mention an episode doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. All these episodes, like I said, every episode of the Vampire Diaries has something in it that is interesting and entertaining. But, these are just the ones I particularly remember that I can point out and say, yeah, that was one of my favorites. I also really liked, let's see. Yeah, I also like number 8 quite a bit. We'll always have Bourbon Street. It's when they look back at, Damon and Stefan back in 1942. and we see how Lexi was, in the process of helping Stefan. And I like the flashback we had later on in the season, regarding Damon and Lexi had sort of a flare at one point, which is really surprising considering how hostile they were to each other when we actually seen Lexi alive back in season 1 in the present. But yeah, so Damon basically got her to fall in love with him, and then completely screwed her basically. Not that way that time either. And it's basically completely fucked with their mind and stuff like that. Excuse the language. And so then we get more history between them. And of course, it's always great seeing the brothers dealing with each other when they're at different points as people as vampires, and seeing them trying to help the other and stuff like that. And the episodes 11 or 12 and onward, we got a couple episodes on the island, as they're trying to find the cure, and that was also a big part of this season, as well as Jeremy temporarily trying to kill every vampire he could, even Elena. But yeah, the episodes on the island I really enjoyed for the sole purpose of the fact that we got a completely different setting compared to what we're used to on the show. And so that was really cool to see. I'm glad how all out they went with that. It's nice to see just the characters interacting with things on a different landscape, So that was really cool episodes. Especially A View to Kill, Into the Wild, stuff of that nature. And Klaus continued to develop really well this season as well. And I sort of think they were trying to make Klaus seem a little bit more redeemable, before going into his own show, The Originals. And some people I read are kind of against Klaus ever redeeming himself. And I sort of see their point because they always want him to be that, kind of villainous type of character. And he still can kind of be that, but I think there would be a problem if you kept him the same way throughout both the Vampire Diaries and the Originals. I feel like a big part of his story might be him becoming more of a good person at some point, you know what I mean? And we've seen that little by little since he first appeared on the Vampire Diaries. How much he cares about Caroline and things of that nature, and how he's actually saved her quite a couple handfuls of times at this point. Having her drink his blood, to save her from, werewolf stuff and things like that. Things of that nature, as I already said. And, of course, we see Klaus eventually leave the Vampire Diaries, unfortunately, because he was getting his own spin-off show, as are Elijah, and hopefully Rebecca joins him in the series as well. And I was thinking that Klaus, Elijah, and Rebecca would be the main characters on the Originals, which they are, but it looks like Rebecca isn't joining them on that show right away. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that, because I'm not caught up yet. I still have to watch all of Season 5, all of Season 6, and then get into the Originals. But I really like how Klaus sort of left it, is really good. We'll get to that in a couple more minutes. And another great episode was episode 15, Stand By Me. Of course, that was after... Oh yeah, Down the Rabbit Hole was great as well, and they were that much closer to finding the cure. And we see Catherine show up, and she basically just feeds Jeremy to Silas when they're, about to awaken him and stuff like that. And so Jeremy. Okay. That sounds like a ship name for Damon and Jeremy. Oh god, it would be awkward. Anyway, we see Jeremy, he's killed by Silas, and Elena is sort of another great psychological point of the show this season. Seeing Elena dealing with Jeremy's death, sort of being in that denial stage before eventually coming around and just having a complete breakdown. And that was really intense. It was really sad to see Jeremy die. And yeah, I know I said before we don't get many deaths on this show, no major characters really die or anything, and I still think it should happen a little bit more often. And a lot of times when characters die, they're brought back on the show anyway, eventually. So I feel like we should have more permanent deaths. But we got Alaric and things like that before, so it's getting a little bit better in that department as far as that goes. So it's improving on that area a little bit to me, even though Jeremy is actually resurrected at the end of the season. But nonetheless, it was still really effective with the way they used it. And Elena, at that point, turning her humanity off, as Damon instructed her. And, Damon couldn't compel her, or, use a sire bond with her anymore because, there has to be some emotion involved with that, and she doesn't have any when she turns them off, of course, like vampires do, and they don't want to deal with the pain, or, the pain of feeling, pretty much. And, of course, Elena burning the house, the Gilbert house down. That was all really well done, as you guys can see. Her, Damon, and Stefan walking out there. Really cool. Really intense, and that pretty much changed the course for Elena for the rest of the season. We've seen another completely different version of the character. We've seen Elena, the good, compassionate person. We've seen Catherine, who Dobrev plays, and see she's completely different. She's kind of selfish. She's really thinking of herself first most of the time. However, Catherine does humanity in her once in a while, and then Nina just gets to play a completely different side to Elena's character. And Elena just sort of becomes more like Catherine in a sense because of her motives after that point. And it's just a really a lot of people called Elena, excuse my language, a bitch when she became a vampire, and this is probably why. This is probably around the time they started saying that. Because turning her emotion humanity switch off. But I actually think it was a really good time for the character, and to see her acting completely differently and trying to, put herself above anyone else. It was just different to see the character act like that, and I thought it was actually pretty entertaining. She, was really done well, I thought. And like I said, episode 20, the originals, the backdoor pilot to the original spin-off show, was a great episode, man. And it really makes me excited to delve into that series as soon as I fully catch up on the Vampire Diaries, season 5 and season 6 and such. And then I'll delve into the originals, and you'll be sure to see videos about that at some point, I'm sure. But this is a great setup, pilot type of episode to go into that spin-off. Seeing Klaus recognizing Marcel from his past, still being alive in control of New Orleans, which the Michelsons used to have complete and total control over, and Klaus is sort of the king there. Ever since then, Marcel has taken over and sort of regulated all the witches to not being able to use their power against him because of all the control he has with the others here. And so we know, I think the initial plot for the originals is going to be Klaus and Elijah sort of taking back their spot, which is of course set up at the end of the originals with the witch that remained alive after her sister was killed. And Elijah's entrance in that was great as well. Just taking out those two in the alley and stuff like that. And it really makes me excited. And Klaus getting Haley pregnant, that's one of the things I'm a little bit unsure of. I think it would be an interesting dynamic seeing Klaus as a father. What I'm a little bit shaky on is him having a further relationship with Haley. And yeah, as he said, it was pretty much a drunken one-night stand with her when we've seen them having, about to have sex, earlier in the season and stuff. So I don't know how much I really like Haley as a character. I thought I liked her at first, but then she became really kind of untrustworthy, and I sort of shifted on her. But I don't know, she might develop pretty well too in the originals. I'll still pay attention to her. Phoebe Tonkin, of course, Paul Wesley and her, great real life couple and stuff like that. But I'm just not sure how much I like Haley's character, but we'll see. I'll give it a shot. I like the whole setup. I like the different setting. Of course, I like the scenes between Klaus and Elijah are just completely brilliant and full of emotion and just so much history between the two and their family. Just a lot of great stuff in that episode that makes me excited to watch the originals once I catch up on TVD. And also, and then Damon and Stefan trying to trigger Elena's humanity as Silas is starting to run around, appearing to people as anyone he wanted to confuse them, put them in bad positions, even, trying to screw with Klaus's mind. And so it's all really good. And Bonnie making a deal with Catherine. Episode 22, The Walking Dead. No, not The Walking Dead, but They're Walking Dead, when there's that time when Silas is able to temporarily resurrect all the supernatural beings who have died on that other plane. So it's great seeing Lexi temporarily alive and back physically with our characters, seeing her and Stefan partying and having conversation about Elena, seeing her basically stick it to Damon about, not making a move on her again. And just the advice Lexi, and how Lexi is always able to help Stefan to some capacity. They just have great scenes. And I sort of wish Lexi would be resurrected permanently, because I think she was killed way too early back in season 1. But it's still great to see her in flashbacks, and even like when they're as ghosts like this, it's still great to see. And makes for some brilliant moments between the characters. Seeing Alaric back was great as well. And Jeremy, too, which actually ended up bringing Elena's humanity back, along with Damon looking like he had killed Matt in episode 21. And, of course, that brought Elena's humanity back, her emotions, but she's still completely breaking down. So when she's seen Jeremy, she was able to spend that time with him, give that closure and goodbye with him and Alaric. And seeing Alaric's, drinking with Damon, having burgers, it's just really great to see him back. And I hope Alaric is actually permanently resurrected sometime, too. Because he's such a likable character, and, how he's like a mentor and like a parental father figure to Damon and to Elena and Jeremy, and, best friend to Damon, which brings out another side to Damon's character. And so that was all really good as well. And, of course, graduation, that was a great episode as well, to see Bonnie, Elena, Caroline, and stuff like that finally graduating high school, which they seemed older than in the past, but they're just now graduating. And of course, Klaus showing up to actually save them from the witches, who were brought back because of what happened in The Walking Dead, episode 22. And, seeing Klaus using a, graduation cap just to completely decapitate that witch was completely awesome. And that final scene he had with Caroline before leaving to go back to New Orleans in the original spin-off and all that, saying he's allowing Tyler to come back to Mystic Falls after forcing him to, be on the run. Even though he would never go after him, he still kept him on the run. Putting that fear in Tyler's mind that he had to keep on moving. But he told Caroline he would actually allow Tyler to come back to Mystic Falls and be with her. And Klaus said that, I haven't seen Klaus, right? Klaus told Caroline that, Tyler is her first love, but I intend to be her last. And I actually support that. I kind of hope Caroline actually goes on the originals at some point and becomes a part of the show, and her and Klaus are sort of like the final couple on that series, and for, the final couple for each of them. I think that would be great. And they've just had a really good build-up. I think it would be a good, really good payoff to do that at some point. So it's great to see Klaus's return, and that twist. We haven't been knowing what Silas looks like in his real form. We thought he was this disgusting figure. But as we've seen when they finally turn him to stone at the end, with the magic and stuff like that, we see that once he breaks out and Stefan's trying to drive off with him. And it was also really touching to see Alaric and Lexi disappear just as they were giving like the best of advice and moments with Damon and Stefan respectively. But when Silas breaks out and he actually stakes Stefan, not kills him but enough to injure him, and throws him in the box instead and dumps him into the lake, and trapping Stefan. So I'm wondering where Stefan's going to end up next season, or how long it's going to be before we see him again. He's not dead, but we'll probably see a little bit of a delay before we see the real Stefan escaping. And so we find out that Stefan is basically a doppelganger to Silas, sort of like Elena is to Catherine. And that's a pretty good twist. It's going to be good to see Paul Wesley playing both Stefan and Silas now, because now he sort of gets to do what Nina Dobrev does with Elena and Catherine, portraying two completely different sides and characters and stuff like that. Of course, we've seen Wesley portrayed, the darker sides of Stefan as well. But to play Silas right now at this point, too, we're going to see a completely evil and sadistic side to him, to his acting, which should be really cool to see. And I'm sure they'll raise hell once other people realize that Stefan was a doppelganger to Silas, and Silas looks exactly like him. So that should all be really good setup for next season. Season 5, I'll get into that very soon. It'll be a while before you see my next general season review. But of course, it'll come eventually as I catch up, slowly but surely. I'll be up there. Hopefully I'll be all the way caught up on series for Season 7, when that comes back on in the fall. But yeah, overall, Season 4, another very, very good season for the show. Not my favorite, but still on par with some of the very best of it. Season 3 is probably still my favorite, but still a very, very quality and worthy season for the show. And yeah, I'm curious to see how much I like Season 5 and Season 6, because a lot of people complain about how much worse it's gotten. I am sort of at the point where I'm trusting the show. I feel like it's still going to be really good no matter what. That's how much faith I have in it. And so yeah, another really good season. I'll be starting Season 5 soon. I will be watching the second episode of Season 2 of Penny Dreadful tonight, so look forward, not tonight or tomorrow, most likely I'll be watching it. So look forward to my review of that episode of Penny Dreadful within the next couple days at least, and whatever else I put up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this very long video, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Hope you guys have a good weekend. I only have 3 more days of high school, and then I graduate. This Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm done with high school. And I graduate, my official ceremony's on next Friday. So that should be, I'm having mixed emotions, yes and no, as far as being excited to be done with school. Yes, because I'm obviously not going to miss waking up at 5:30 in the morning, unless I have to do that for work at some point in my life. And I'm not going to really miss the work too much, but I'll miss some of the people, and I did have really good teachers throughout my education, because I went to the same school from DK all the way to right now, about to graduate. And there's people I'll miss, but some people I kind of hope to keep in contact with and stuff. Now, this isn't my personal vlog or anything, so I'll let you guys go here. Catch you guys next time. Vampire Diaries, great show, already one of my favorites of all time, at least in the top 5. We'll see where it goes and how the series ends, and then I'll probably try to talk about that more officially whenever that happens. I hope it goes on for a little while yet. And yeah, catch you guys next time, and peace.